Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I'm really excited because I didn't actually think I would be filming this video. It just wasn't anything that even crossed my mind. And then I was scrolling through the Tor Nightfire books they're excited about for 2022 article. I don't know if you guys have ever read that. I will link it down below. But every year, the lovely people at Tor Nightfire put up a list of all of the horror books that are coming out, or at least that they know about. Sometimes they miss a few of the indie authors. For the year with little teeny tiny synopsises about them. And so I read at the beginning of the year, and I've been compiling my own list for a little bit towards the end of 2021. And was scrolling through like their May and June releases just to see what was like coming up, or to see if there were any authors who had announced something new. And there were a ton. Like, so many books have been released since I filmed my most anticipated books of 2022 at the very, very end of December. And now, which is the very beginning of April, or I guess it's mid-April at this point. It's like April 12th. So yeah, in those like 3.5 months, all of these new releases have come out, and a lot by authors that I'm really, really excited to read from. So I just wanted to share with y'all more of the books that are coming out in 2022 that I am stoked on. So as of April, I have already read 2 of the books that were on my original most anticipated books of 2022 list, and I'm reading my 3rd. And I think those are the only ones that have come out so far. Yeah, I'm reading The Resting Place by Camilla Sten, which came out on March 29th at the moment. I read The Ravenous Dead. So I have read 4. Or I've read 3, and I am on book number 4. And then the next book to come out that I'm really stoked on is The Fervor by Almakatsu, which comes out in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. But yeah, so I was going through, and the latter half of the year has just announced a ton more books. Again, I'll have the Tor Nightfire article linked down below. I know that Tim Meyer just announced a book. I didn't want to put it on this list because I think it's a Western and not horror. But if you're a Tim Meyer fan, he has a book, I think, coming out in the middle of April. About dinosaurs and cowboys, so that's kind of cool. But let's stop with all of my babbling and rambling, and let me go through all of the awesome books that are coming out at the latter half of 2022 that weren't included in my original most anticipated books of 2022. Again, not because I didn't think they were worth talking about, but because they hadn't been announced yet, or at least I didn't know they were announced. Okay, so first up, Darcy Coates is going to have 3 books out this year. 3. Last year she had 2, The Haunting of Lee Harker and The Whispering Dead. This year she had The Ravenous Dead come out, which I've already read. I have a whole video on my channel reviewing that. But on September 6th of 2022, she will be releasing Gallows Hill. So, Gallows Hill is... so I'm going to read the synopsis. As you know, Darcy Coates is a cozy horror author and one of my favorites. I adore her, and I'm so excited for all of her books. So, Gallows Hill. The Hull family has owned the Gallows Hill winery for generations, living and working on the beautiful grounds where they grow their famous grapes, until the night Mr. and Mrs. Hull settle down for the evening, and are dead by morning. When their daughter Margot inherits the family business, she wants nothing to do with it. The winery is valued for its unparalleled produce, but it's built on a field where hundreds of convicts were once hanged, and the locals whisper morbid rumors. They say the ground is cursed. It's been more than a decade since Margot last saw her childhood home, but now that she's alone in the sprawling, dilapidated building, she begins to believe the curse is more than real, and that she may be the next victim of the house that never rests. Oh, I feel like that could be a really good autumn read. Very excited. And then she has a second one, or I guess this is the 3rd one, that's coming out a little bit earlier, and it is From Below, which will be released on June 7th of 2022. And this premise is... no light, no air, no escape. Hundreds of feet beneath the ocean's surface, a graveyard waits. Years ago, the SS Arcadia vanished without a trace during a routine voyage. Though a strange, garbled emergency message was broadcast, neither the ship nor any of its crew could be found. 60 years later, its wreck has finally been discovered, more than 300 miles from its intended course. A silent graveyard deep beneath the ocean's surface, eagerly waiting for the first sign of life. Cove and her dive team have been granted permission to explore the Arcadia's rusting hull. Their purpose is straightforward: examine the wreck, film everything, and, if possible, uncover how and why the supposedly unsinkable ship vanished. But the Arcadia has not yet had its fill of death, and something dark and hungry watches from below. With limited oxygen and the ship slowly closing in around them, Cove and her team will have to fight their way free of the unspeakable horror now desperate to claim them. Because once they're trapped beneath the ocean's waves, there's no going back. Ooh, I have never read underwater horror from Darcy Coates, and just, that sounds amazing. Just so you know, a lot of these premises I haven't really fully read. I just saw that an author I really liked was releasing something. So if I seem like genuinely reacting to some of these synopses as if I haven't read them, that's probably why. Okay, next up is Ghost Eaters by Clay McLeod Chapman. I learned who Clay McLeod Chapman was in 2021 because Nightworm sent us Whisper Down the Lane, which was like a satanic panic 80s kind of mystery thriller horror story. I don't know what you would call it, but I really enjoyed it. I really liked Clay McLeod Chapman's writing, and he's very, very heavily involved in a lot of horror television and movies, so I do really like his pacing, and I'm very excited about this. This comes out on September 20th, 2022, and the premise is, for fans of Riley Sager and Paul Tremblay, that is definitely me, a terrifying supernatural page-turner that explores ghosts, grief, and god complexes. Ever since their on-again, off-again college romance, Aaron hasn't been able to set a single boundary with charismatic but reckless Silas, who's been chasing the next big high since graduation. When he texts her to spring him out of rehab, she knows enough is enough. She's ready to start a career, make new friends, and meet a great guy, even if that means cutting Silas off. But when Silas turns up dead from an overdose, Aaron's world falls apart. When Aaron learns that Silas discovered a drug that allowed him to see the dead, she doesn't believe it's real, but agrees to a pill-popping seance to ease her guilt and pain. When she steps back into the real world, she starts to see ghosts from her southern hometown's bloody and brutal past everywhere. Are the effects pharmacological or something more sinister? And will Aaron be able to shut the Pandora's box of horrors she's opened? The propulsive momentum, bone-chilling scares, and dark meditations on the weight of history, the Southern horror will make you think twice about opening the doors unknown. Ugh, it's a Southern setting. I love a good Southern setting. I'm so excited for that. That sounds like it could be a movie, and I'm here for that. Okay, next up. Okay, so I said this in my most anticipated books for 2022 video, the original one, that I was hesitant because Catriona Ward was releasing another book so soon after she released The Last House on Needless Street, and that book was Sundial. I have a whole review on Sundial. I loved it. It was great. But she's got another book, so at first I was like, how is she cranking out all of these books, like one every 6 months? But this is Little Eve, and it actually looks like Little Eve was originally released in 2018, but I think it was only released as a Kindle edition. So I don't have the exact date. Tor said that it would be released on October 11th. Goodreads, it says it's already been released, but only for the Kindle, so I'm not quite sure what the deal is with that, or if this is like a re-release, but that is what that is. So yes, Little Eve by Catriona Ward in October, it sounds like. And the premise is, Eve and Dinah are everything to one another, never parted day or night. They are raised among the children, a community of strays and orphans ruled by a mysterious figure they call Uncle. All they know is the great Isle of Altnahara, which sits in the Black Sea off the wildest coast of Scotland. Eve loves the free, savage life of the Isle and longs to inherit Uncle's power. She is untroubled save by her dreams, of soft arms and a woman singing. Dinah longs for something other, but the world is at war and cannot be kept at bay. As the solitude of Altnahara is broken, Eve's faith and sanity fracture. In a great storm in the depths of winter, as the old year dies, the locals discover a devastating scene on the Isle. Eve and Dinah's accounts of the night contradict and intertwine. As past and present converge, only one woman can be telling the truth. Who is guilty? Who innocent? Okay. For some reason, maybe because it's set in like Scotland, that's giving me like Wicker Man vibes, like culty Wicker Man vibes. Don't know how I feel about this, but I was so impressed with Sundial that I'm just like, yeah, let's bring it on. Let's read this. Let's go. And I really like cult horror. Okay, next up, I had no idea that this was happening, but Ian Reed, I think that's how you say his name, there's a lot of I's in there, is coming out with a brand new book. For those of you who don't know, he wrote I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which is a book that I have many mixed feelings on, but I think at the end of the day I really like and appreciate. So he's known for his weird kind of psychological misleading horror, but he is releasing We Spread on September 27th, 2022. And the premise for this is, the author of the evocative, spine-tingling, and razor-sharp I'm Thinking of Ending Things that inspired the Netflix original movie and the short, shocking psychological three-hander, Foe, returns with a new work of philosophical suspense. That is a lot of praise in one sentence. That was a very long sentence. Penny, an artist, has lived in the same apartment for decades, surrounded by the artifacts and keepsakes of her long life. She is resigned to the mundane rituals of old age, until things start to slip. Before her longtime partner passed away years earlier, provisions were made, unbeknownst to her, for a room in a unique long-term care residence, where Penny finds herself after one too many incidents. Initially surrounded by peers, conversing, eating, sleeping, looking out at the beautiful woods that surround the house, all is well. She even begins to paint again. But as the days start to blur together, Penny, with a growing sense of unrest and distrust, starts to lose her grip on the passage of time and on her place in the world. Is she succumbing to the subtly destructive effects of aging, or is she an unknowing participant in something more unsettling? At once compassionate and uncanny, told in spare, hypnotic prose, Ian Reid's genre-defying third novel explores questions of conformity, art, productivity, relationships, and what ultimately it means to grow old. I don't know how I feel about that premise, but I know that Ian Reid writes in a way that it's never what it seems, so I'm really interested to see what he does with this. This book seems a little long. It's 304 pages. I don't think I'm Thinking of Ending Things was anywhere near that long. But yeah, I will definitely be reading this. I think the fact that he has a title like We Spread, I feel like his titles always give away kind of what's happening. So the title is very interesting to me. So excited for that. Okay. So the next one is Daphne by Josh Malerman. Now, I am not a fan of Bird Box. I've talked about that before, but I really did like a lot of the short stories in Goblin. I thought Goblin was a really interesting concept, and it showed me, both Bird Box and Goblin, that Josh Malerman knows how to write scary scenes. So interested for this. I believe the release date for this is August 23rd, 2022, according to Goodreads. However, it says that it will be released, I think, in like a physical copy on September 20th. So I'm not sure what the exact release date is on that. But the premise that we have, so horror has a new name, Daphne. A brutal, enigmatic woman stalks a girls' high school basketball team in a total reimagining of the slasher genre. Daphne is much more than a female Jason, a female Freddy. Whatever you do, don't think about Daphne. Don't think about her at all. Mixing a fresh coming of age, a treatise on anxiety, and an instantly iconic female slasher, Daphne delivers a horrifying modern vision of classic horror. This is an unforgettable thriller as only Josh Malerman could imagine it. I'm very into the slasher horror genre right now. I loved Clown in a Cornfield. I loved My Heart is a Chainsaw. So excited for that. Hesitant with Josh Malerman because I think he can write scary scenes, but I have yet to see him deliver a whole package that I've enjoyed. But I will definitely be reading that, and I love the name Daphne. That's great. Okay, next up, this should be no-brainer. Fairy Tale by Stephen King. Now, before I get into Fairy Tale, Stephen King has also teased that he will be releasing another book, I believe called Holly, which will be about Holly Gibney from the Mr. Mercedes series and The Outsider and If It Bleeds. Really excited for that. Have no details on it yet. Have no release date. I think it's probably 2023, but just want to put that out there. But yes, so Stephen King will be releasing Fairy Tale on September 6th, 2022. And the premise of this is legendary storyteller Stephen King goes into the deepest well of his imagination in this spellbinding novel about a 17-year-old boy who inherits the keys to a parallel world where good and evil are at war, and the stakes could not be higher for that world or ours. Charlie Reed looks like a regular high school kid, great at baseball and football, a decent student, but he carries a heavy load. His mom was killed in a hit-and-run accident when he was 10, and grief drove his dad to drink. Charlie learned how to take care of himself and his dad. When Charlie is 17, he meets a dog named Radar and her aging master, Howard Bowditch, a recluse in a big house at the top of a big hill with a locked shed in the backyard. Sometimes strange sounds emerge from it. Charlie starts doing jobs for Mr. Bowditch and loses his heart to Radar. Then when Bowditch dies, he leaves Charlie a cassette tape telling a story no one would believe. What Bowditch knows and has kept secret all his long life is that inside the shed is a portal to another world. King's storytelling and fairy tales soars. This is a magnificent and terrifying tale in which good is pitted against overwhelming evil, and a heroic boy and his dog must lead the battle. Early in the pandemic, King asked himself, what could you write that would make you happy? As if my imagination had been waiting for the question to be asked, I saw a vast deserted city, deserted but alive. I saw the empty streets, the haunted buildings, a gargoyle head lying overturned in the street. I saw smashed statues of what I didn't know, but I eventually found out. I saw a huge, sprawling palace with glass towers so high their tips pierced the clouds. Those images released the story I want to tell. Oh, okay, I think it's going to be like 600 pages. That's very King. This is so interesting to me because this doesn't sound like anything Stephen King has written before. So I'm very, very intrigued to read it. And I feel like the premise really just tells us what like happened in the first 2 chapters. So really feel like I'm going to be going in blind to that one, but I'm excited for it. I mean, I love King, so. Okay, then we get The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Silvia Moreno Garcia, who was the author of Certain Dark Things as well as Mexican Gothic. So this one comes out on July 19th, 2022. And the premise for that is, from the New York Times bestselling author of Mexican Gothic and Velvet Was the Night, comes a dreamy reimagining of the island of Dr. Moreau, set against the backdrop of 19th century Mexico. Carlota Moreau, a young woman growing up in a distant and luxurious estate, safe from the conflict and strife of the Yucatan Peninsula, the only daughter of either a genius or a madman. Montgomery Lawton, a melancholic overseer with a tragic past and propensity for alcohol, an outcast who assists Dr. Moreau with his scientific experiments, which are financed by the Lizaldes, owners of magnificent haciendas and plentiful coiffures. I think that's how you say it. The hybrids, the fruits of the doctor's lab, destined to blindly obey their creator and remain in the shadows. A motley group of part human, part animal monstrosities. All of them living in a perfectly balanced and static world, which is jolted by the abrupt arrival of Eduardo Lizalde, the charming and careless son of Dr. Moreau's patron, who will unwittingly begin a dangerous chain reaction. For Moreau keeps secrets, Carlota has questions, and in the sweltering heat of the jungle, passion may ignite. I don't know anything about the island of Dr. Moreau. I've only ever heard of it, so I can't really dissect the parallels in this premise. This sounds interesting. Silvia Moreno Garcia has some interesting concepts and ideas. I liked Mexican Gothic a lot more than Certain Dark Things, so I will absolutely be giving this a read and just continuing to see what I think of her style. I'm not 100% sure when this book comes out. I think it actually comes out in early 2023, but it's called Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi, which was teased by Tor Nightfire, but Goodreads says that it was released in 2021, so I'm confused about that. So maybe it was released somewhere else and now Tor is bringing it to a wider audience. But the premise for this is St. Vincent's Orphanage for Boys. Turn of the century in a remote valley in Pennsylvania. Here, under the watchful eyes of several priests, 30 boys work and learn and worship. They live their lives in a methodical way and get along despite different personalities and past. Peter Barlow, orphaned by a nighttime murder at his childhood home, has made a new life here. As he approaches adulthood, he has friends, a future, family. Then late one stormy night, a group of men arrive at their door, one whom is badly wounded and his body covered with occult symbols carved into his flesh. Upon his death, an ancient evil is released that infests St. Vincent and the children within. Soon boys begin acting differently, forming groups, taking sides. Others turn up dead. Now Peter and those dear to him must choose sides of their own, each of them knowing their lives and perhaps their eternal souls are at risk. So I brought this book up because when I saw the preview for it, everybody was like, if you like Summer of Night, if you like it, if you like coming of age horror stories, read this. Like, that was the general premise, and that's my favorite horror genre. I've never read Philip Fracassi, so I'm really, really interested to see what this is like. That being said, I did notice that he does have a book coming out in a couple of months, so I thought it might be a good idea to pick that book up and see his writing style to prepare for Boys in the Valley, which I think is going to get widely released at the beginning of 2023. So his book for 2022 is called A Child Alone with Strangers, which comes out on August 16th. And there's a very brief description. So it says, when the young Harry Thorne is kidnapped and held prisoner in a remote farmhouse surrounded by miles of forest, he finds himself connecting with a strange force living in the woods, using that bond to wreak havoc against his captors. Unknown to the boy, however, is this ancient being has its own reasons for wanting the interlopers gone. There's something hidden beneath the house, tucked away in the dark, damp root cellar, waiting for its return. So this sounds to me like very cosmic horror-y, but for some reason it kind of reminds me of the premise of like The Black Phone, by Joe Hill that's being turned into a movie with Ethan Hawke in a couple months. So I don't know. I've never read his writing, but he does have 2 books with really interesting premises coming out. So I think I will read that. I know Nightworm sent me one of his short story collections. I think it was called like Beneath the Pale Sky or something like that. So I may have to give his short stories a read just to see like him out as an author. But yeah, excited about that. So those are all of the books that I am now currently very excited about that are coming out in the latter half of 2022. And there were just so many authors and names and premises that I wanted to share with you guys. So I felt the need to make a follow-up video to my original video back in January. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, thank you so much for watching. If there are any books that you guys are excited for, let me know in the comments down below. I would love to read about what you guys are excited for, see if that's something I'm interested in. And I will catch you all in the next one. Mwah.